Good evening, good morning, and good night. Welcome to Inappropriate Radio. It's your host, Shauna. Let's get into this. So, hi guys. I hope all is well. As you know, we've been phasing through the series about the periodic table. Now, today we're going to be going over carbon. And before we get into this, I just want to say that I am not a conspiracy theorist. I just do research, and the things we discuss comes up in ways that, I've learned things, okay? So, now, remember we have the 4 elements: carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen. Okay? Those are the 4 elements that are essential to life. Okay? Almost 100%, that's about 96% of living things are comprised of at least those 4 elements. Now, we've already went over oxygen and hydrogen, right? And we had this discussion about, how, again, these elements are essential to living, right? Now, your body is about 1/5 carbon, and it's a solid at room temperature. Any other way, it's going to be a gas. It's actually considered the king of the elements because it forms more compounds than any other element. Now, I know you're probably going to think I'm crazy when I say this, but this is actually true. A lot of people think 666 is the devil, right? But a lot of people don't know that when you hear 666, it's making reference to carbon because it has 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. So I'm not exactly sure where the 666 comes from, and people thinks that it has something to do with the devil. It actually is the complete opposite. It has everything to do with life. Okay, because carbon is what allows the DNA and the RNA structure and other, biomolecules, right, to have its form and its shape. So without carbon, our DNA wouldn't be structured the way it is, and it wouldn't be flexible. It wouldn't, link up the way it does, and it would not be a flexible string of links. Okay? So that's important to know. Your body actually pushes out. We breathe in oxygen, and we push out carbon dioxide, okay? This is one of those elements that can bind with itself. It's most abundant in rocks, sediments, reservoirs, the ocean, the atmosphere, and living organisms. The rest of the carbon that we have access to is released through respiration from plants and other animals. Okay? Carbon reduces blood's ability to carry oxygen. Okay? So that's important because, again, this is one of those elements that has more than one responsibility. And what's so strange is that although it's responsible for being the building block, to RNA and DNA, it's still an element that, again, has more than one function. Okay? And its form changes, which lets you know that it is responsible for being other things in other ways, right? Now, like oxygen, carbon wasn't created in the Big Bang Theory. Remember, we discussed that about 14 billion years ago, when the galaxy for the Earth and Earth's galaxy had been created, right? It's about that time frame. And the atmosphere was mainly comprised of lithium, helium, and hydrogen, right? So that's important to know, because this is one of those elements that came over time, right? It developed over time as life began to transform. Now, carbon is black, and I know a lot of y'all are gonna go crazy about this, but when you hear people talking about melanin, they're actually making reference to carbon. I know, please don't kill me, don't go crazy, but yeah, it's true. Carbon is actually what they would call melanin, okay? So again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. If you anytime want to challenge me on what it is that I'm covering or discussing, trust me, you can, okay? So, yeah. Then, too much exposure to carbon can cause hypercapnia. It's actually really popular amongst people is when you have too much carbon built in your bloodstream. It's like you're not breathing out enough carbon, so you get this element buildup, right? And it causes hypercapnia. So again, these elements are responsible for many different things. Now, carbon is what makes diamonds and graphite, okay? Diamonds are comprised of just one element alone, and it's carbon. Okay, so, and then when you start paying attention to other galaxies in other areas, well, from our observable stance and from our ground and soil and our galaxy, it's diamonds, okay? Carbon makes diamonds. Why is this important? Because it's the fourth most abundant element in the universe, and we have it here, and then it's also in Earth's crust. The most abundant element in the Earth's crust is the 15th spot. Okay, so when you hear about carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen, just know those elements are essential to life, right? We've gone over this, okay? Now we know about carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, all these different forms is carbon bonding with itself. Okay? It's important to be aware of these elements because, again, 1 billion years ago is when carbon was said to have come into fruition, right? 12.5 billion years ago, which is 1 billion years after the Big Bang Theory. So what that would mean is that we looked different if we were here as humans and other living organisms, because carbon is one of the main building blocks to life. And typically when you start observing, life in all of its form, you'll start to notice that we are going to evolve in our own right. Okay, so the way we behave, the way we appear, the way we transit, all of those things develop. So I'm sure if humans were here, again, we looked, act, smelled, appeared, operated, and functioned totally different, right? Especially with the atmosphere itself being higher in things like hydrogen or helium or lithium, right? Because any of the elements are toxic to consume at certain levels. And when I say at, I mean past certain levels. We have to remember that all of the elements are in our atmosphere, are in our bodies, are in other organisms at a maximum of certain levels. Like carbon, we're made up to 1/5 carbon. So 1/5 of our body is carbon, right? So essentially you would say, this is one of the things that's important to life. How do I capture that? And it's funny because unlike oxygen, carbon is said to never run out because the transaction between plants, humans, and organisms allows for this compound to be cycled over and over again through the air. Okay? Now, before we go, I do want to say this. When I was doing a little research, I didn't get as thorough because the amount of time, first of all, that I put into research wasn't as extensive today. But also, I just wanted to say, I want to pose a question. Because I already asked which of the 4 elements were the most important. Now I'm going to ask this. Do you believe that when carbon came, we began to take on a different form? Now I'm asking this because when I started researching, this particular element is the only element that came up with research in regards to a spiritual sense. What do I mean by that? When I did research for carbon, a lot of articles, scholarly articles and papers had come up and had been calling atoms for carbon a secret, right? Like there's some secret to the atoms that are from carbon. So far, at least out of these first 4, this hasn't come up for any of the other elements. Okay? So I think that's important to note because this basically just goes to show that I'm not the only one who can see the spiritual aspect of these elements. And they definitely have a great correlation to us and the universe and all other living things. Us having these same chemicals is proof that we all come from the same divine order. We all come from one source. We all come from the same thing. Okay, that's all that means and shows us with any of these elements. There's another 4, but we've been discussing, these 4 are the main 4 to 96% of living things. So it's important to go over those first. After we go over the last element, I was thinking we go into the other elements that are essential to life, the other 4. But I want us to start going into the groups so we could start learning or discussing what can be combined with what's harmful, what's beneficial, things of that nature, okay? But I do love y'all. I hope all is well. I hope y'all are drinking y'all water, eating y'all fruit and y'all vegetables, getting y'all rest and taking care